Everyone, my name is Simon Misiewicz. I have to now look at a different camera. I've just moved everything around to my studio. So good evening, everyone. My name is indeed Simon Misiewicz from the Property Experts panel. And whilst we're going to be going around the rest of the panel members, just say what everything is, we do need to remember that it is Easter. So this is going to be an ecstatic event tonight. We've shelled out on all of the technologies and platforms to be able to take your questions and answers. So make sure that if your brain is scrambled or fried, that you ask your questions and we'll make sure we'll get you the answers. So let's go round the other panel members then and to say hello. So I'm Simon Misiewicz from Optimize. Bronwen, over to your good self.
Hi, everybody. Happy Easter, first of all. And again, I'm just amazed that it's over a year now since we started this. And this was just to be during the small bit of COVID we were going to be in. But of course, we're a year on. And this panel of experts that we've brought together, we have so much fun, but we get some brilliant questions too. Portfolio, HMOs, houses of multiple occupation, holiday lets, guest houses, and some small developments. But more importantly, I love to help people learn. And so I have an online program of learning, which is video webinars, and I will coach and mentor as well. So if anyone's interested in getting the basic education, then click on the link that Simon's going to have in the YouTube and let me know if you're interested, but always happy to chat. So happy Easter, everybody. Let's move on to Teresa.
Good evening, everybody. Yes, my name's Teresa Kaczmarek. I am a HMO landlord. I rent out mainly to tenants on benefits, and I also represent the NRLA. So prior to this whole fiasco, I was out holding networking meetings and legislative update meetings in the Midlands, so covering Nottingham, Derby, Leicestershire, Northamptonshire, that kind of area. But since then, I've been a year now just doing these kind of webinars on supporting landlords where I can, pointing them in the right direction. So yeah, hopefully I can be of some assistance to you this evening. And I will pass you over to Simon, the other Simon.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Good evening, everybody. My name is Simon Hodgson, whole of market broker. That's kind of the expertise that I bring to the panel tonight. I've been investing in property for 20 years, or over 20 years, actually. I first started out getting some education from an American guy called Russ Whitney, who those of you who have heard of the other Simon Zucci, was also getting some education from back in the late 90s, early noughties. And what I very quickly learned was that with a bit of specialist investor knowledge, I easily knew more than the average broker knew about what to do, which mortgage lenders to go to, et cetera, and how to utilize those products in order to best work as an investor. So that's really where I honed my skills. Since then, I have, as I said, I've invested in property for over 20 years, learned how to lose it all through the credit crunch, rebuild it back up. Still invest in property these days, and really, yeah, I'm here to provide as much information as I can on funding and finance and creatively recycling your cash to move on to the next deal. And speaking of moving on, I'm going to move on now to Wayne, I think. Here we go, Wayne.
Is it me? Hello, happy Easter. That was a good link, Simon. My name's Wayne Norcliffe. I won't be as eloquent in my links, I'm sure, but I'll give it a go. Happy Easter, everybody. I'm Wayne Norcliffe. I'm a fellow with the RICS and the Association of Building Engineers, and a practicing chartered surveyor, mostly undertaking work in and around the Hampshire and Dorset area on residential properties at the moment, but hoping soon to be doing some external wall cladding work. And also I'm a national expert on various different property situations, commercial and residential, having operated across the UK. And yeah, that's really me, I suppose. Not much to say about me. Surveyors are very shy. So I'm going to hand over now to Tim Bishop.
Thank you, Wayne. First of all, can I congratulate Simon on your egg humour? They were truly fabulous yolks. Thank you. Right, I'm Tim Bishop, and when I'm not practicing for my future role as a stand-up comedian, which probably will have, my career will last about 10 seconds before I die on stage, I'm actually a solicitor. I own a firm called Vearncombe Bishop. I've got about 65 staff. We cover a wide range, a full range of legal services, but we have a few specialisms. So we do a lot of property work, and in particular, we have a property investor team acting for investors and developers nationwide. Only some people within my property team work on the investor side because we think there's a real difference in terms of the legal advice they need. We also have litigators and other members of the team as well. We also have an extremely specialist leasehold team, 5 strong, possibly the most specialist, largest team of its type in the country. So if you need any advice on lease extensions, freehold purchase, or right to manage, we're the guys to come to. In addition to my law firm, I'm also an investor and developer. I've done a commercial conversion. I've got a block of flats, part of which is working really nicely as serviced accommodation, and an 8-bed HMO. In the process of setting up a family SAS to invest in some commercial property, and having been telling everyone quite happily for the last 14 months that I thought Q2 this year was going to see a crash or a dip, I've been proved 110% wrong, and I'll happily eat my words. So I'm now smashing out the piggy bank, and I'm planning on buying quite a lot of property in the next 6-9 months. I've started looking at stuff, and already using the wonderful Simon Hodgson for some finance advice, and we'll be investing with Paul of LNPG, buying lots of exciting boilers and stuff, I'm sure, in the next 6 months. So Tim Bishop, Vearncombe Bishop, and we also provide free initial phone advice for investors. So if you've got any query, don't suffer in silence, give us a bell. Over to Paul Hilliard.
Good evening, happy Easter everyone. My name's Paul Hilliard. I'm the Operations Director for LNPG, which is one of the reasons why I'm on here. I'll explain to you when the opportunity arises what LNPG do, but essentially we're a buying group for landlords where you can buy quality products at way below trade prices. So, you know, for example, Magnet Kitchens at less than half the price of a Howden's kitchen. So significantly lower prices. And that's only through the LNPG membership. I'm a director and shareholder of LNPG because I've been investing for 30 years now in property. And I started off buying in the good old United States of America. As, I thought there were better opportunities there than here at the time. I've now sold that property about 10 years ago, but I also invest in Portugal. So if anyone's looking to invest overseas, by all means, give me a shout or ask the right questions. I'm also a portfolio landlord, so I've got your standard vanilla buy-to-lets. I've got HMOs of students, homeless, and professional varieties. I've also got service accommodation, which I totally manage myself, so that's another job that I have. And last but not least, I do the occasional development. So both Tim and I look forward to your questions on development later. So, having wished you all a happy Easter, let me pass you back to Simon to commence the evening.
Well, good evening. I'm going to, if everyone else is done, what I want to do is just share my screens because we are going to do, this is the new segment we've introduced a couple of months ago now, just to let you know about what's happening in the industry. As you know, there will be a new tax year very soon, so going into the 21-22 tax year, but there wasn't too much to talk about really from a income tax perspective, personal allowances, basic rate tax ban, yes, increase, but not too significant to speak about. No capital gains tax announcements was made, even though there's a lot of, and I like this phrase, hoo-ha, about the capital gains tax converted to income tax, and that didn't quite happen. Now, the fact that Rishi didn't make any noise about capital gains tax, that does not mean he is not the silent assassin and ready to just pounce on that like a bunny hopping rabbit. We'll soon see. Corporation tax will be going up, but not yet. Interesting enough, that is going to be going up to 25%, but there is what they call a rate in between the 19%. So if you're earning profits below £50,000, you haven't got to worry. But in year 2023, that is, there will be a tax rate between 19 and 25%. Once you go over £250,000, you will be then subject to the 25% tax rate. So it doesn't really affect too many people. And as Rishi Sunak said, that this would only affect, as in the 25% tax rate, will only affect the top 10% of all UK businesses. So if you're in that bracket, give yourself a sort of pat on the back and say well done to yourselves. So that's all my slides. So I'll give you over now to Teresa, who can talk through her slides.
Hi, yes, so just wanted to announce that the NRLA, National Residential Landlord Association, have celebrated their first year anniversary. So that was 1st of April. So that we were 2 separate organisations, RLA and NLA. So we're now merged together and we've got over 90,000 members, and that's increasing. So we're here to support members with advice, resources to manage your rentals. We've got a large education element as well, and discount on recognised suppliers. And importantly, we lobby the government for fair treatment of both landlords and tenants. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that one up. Also here, basically, one of the benefits of the membership is that I don't know if people can see it, but we get a quarterly landlord magazine, and it's full of really interesting elements. And one of the highlights was just pointing out that city rents have suffered as COVID-19 sees tenants look to suburbs. People are looking for greener spaces, more access to the outdoors during the pandemic, and just looking at the magazine at the highlighting about rental properties, looking at the Rightmove statistics, the amount of properties in some areas have doubled. So properties on the market to rent and not struggling to move, and those areas are Leeds, so that's gone up plus 179%, Nottingham 139%, and Inner London has gone up 139%. So that's the amount of the increase in the amount of rental properties that are on the market as people move into the suburbs. But what I would say, if people are caught up in that there is always opportunities. And I know for a fact that Nottingham City Council, they're very keen to work with landlords, predominantly to tenants who house tenants who are on universal credit on benefits, but they will offer you a service like a tenant fine service, and they'll manage your property for £35 a month. And then Leeds also, they have a tenant fine service, and they'll offer you a bond as well. So if you are in those city centre areas, it's worth hooking up with your council to see what they are doing to entice landlords in, because people need places to live, and there are still long waiting lists at the councils. And then also looking at the rents, there were some dramatic falls in rent across the country. Manchester was down 5.3%, and Inner London was down 12.4%. But basically, I suppose with this, you have to look at what was the increases in those areas, had they had a spike in increases in rent? Because if you go to the Office of National Statistics, they're still showing that rents are remaining on a steady increase. So I suppose it's just these maybe the city rents where they perhaps spiked, maybe they've reached a really high level, and now they're just seeing a bit of a leveling or a slight drop. Also just wanted to highlight as well that Green Homes Grant has been scrapped. So that was a fleeting offering from the government. Basically anybody who was applying for that, they gave like 2 days notice saying, right, that's it, 31st of March, 5 p.m. to get your last applications in for that. So yeah, that's unfortunate, that's now gone. It was overall considered a bit of a flop on, if you ever saw it on social media, people were just moaning like mad about it, because it was just complicated, and, to apply for it. And, you just couldn't get hold of Trustmark registered contractors to do the work. Just to give you an idea, there were 90,000 landlords that applied for it, and they issued less than 50% of vouchers to to the people who had applied, so it wasn't very successful. But I wanted just to bring this up as well, because I think landlords or investors need to be mindful about the minimum energy efficiency standards, because so even though this funding's gone, the government are still moving on with their with their net zero plan for 2050, and they've just finished a consultation where they're looking to raise the EPC levels in the private rental sector to a C from 2025. So if you've got a property that's rated E, that's a bit of a hike. So I would make sure that you do look into this. When you're investing in properties, make sure that you are really, when you renovate, I mean obviously when you renovate it's going to hike up that energy rating level, but if you've got existing properties, look at your EPC and just look at ways as soon as you can to start pushing that up. And then I just wanted to highlight about some webinars that we're running. If you're not all webinared out, we've got one coming up on how to use photographs and videos in disputes. So that's on the 14th of April. And then the NRLA often go out to our members just to find out, to ask them lots of questions about the portfolio, whether they're buying, selling, what how they're affected by the pandemic. So the results of that Q1 survey are going to be talked through on the 28th of April. So it'd be worth, well, I'll definitely be on that webinar just to see what our landlords are currently saying to us. So that can be handy from an investor's point of view as well, just to see, where the hot spots, cold spots are across the country. And we've also launched two new training courses, buying properties at auction and refurbishment. We've got lots of training courses from really basic right through to, sort of recognised qualifications, which are to A-level standard. So yes, that is my update for this week, Simon.
Perfect. Thank you ever so much. And next we can go on to Wayne. So Wayne, take it away.
Hello. Yeah, well, I've just pulled some stats together really to emphasise how the housing market's been doing over the last year since we entered COVID. I think we all know that house prices have gone a bit silly, some might say. Some might say in the right direction. They were already relatively high in terms of historic prices, but the COVID situation, and in particular the stamp duty holiday, has affected them. As we can see here from the land registry stats, the house prices have averaged 8 to 7.5% in the last year. However, when you factor in the average house price and the stamp duty savings that people are making, have they really increased that much? Or is it just symptomatic of people borrowing more, paying more because they can get a £15,000 reduction in stamp duty? The jury's out on that one, and we will see how that pans out in the future. There's still some good places to buy, though, and it seems to be the Midlands, northwards, in particular Manchester, Hull, Liverpool. The Northwest has performed really well in terms of house prices, which is not surprising because there's been a lot of investment into the Northwest, in particular around Manchester, where you've got the Media City hub and the knock-on effect, obviously, of that, where people work in the Media City and live in the suburbs. So yeah, but the stamp duty we talked about earlier there, it's due to end this time on the end of June, on the 30th of June. Whether it will, we'll yet to see. I personally think it will. I think the Chancellor's probably stretched it far enough. There is talk out there that stamp duty needs to be overhauled generally. It's quite an archaic tax system. I myself have put forward an idea for that. I personally believe it should be a seller's tax rather than a buyer's tax, as it's the sellers who make the profit and they're the ones who really should pay the tax. However, we'll see what happens with that one. And as I say, on the last point really is just to emphasise that lovemoney.com in particular, but there's quite a few places saying Manchester, Hull, Liverpool, Northwest generally, in terms of capital growth, has been good and a good places to continue to buy. I also, as I said on the last seminar, I think, I still think the Labour red wall seats that the Conservatives took over in the last election, I think there's 33 from memory. I can upload a spreadsheet. Actually, I've got a list of them somewhere. But obviously, the Conservative government will want to keep those seats in the next election. And every time I watch Boris in Parliament being asked a question by one of the MPs from one of those seats, he turns around and says, well, there's X millions of pounds coming in your direction. So it does seem like they're throwing money into the former Labour seats, which is not surprising. Why wouldn't they? One, because they need regeneration, a lot of ex-mining towns, a lot of ex-northern towns that could do with some money, but also politically, they want to keep those seats going forward, obviously. So I would as well be looking at those seats in particular. And in some places, you can pick up houses for less than 50k still. So it's worth a look. Well, that's my update. Hope it's useful to you. I'll pass over to whoever.
Okay, thank you ever so much, Wayne. We're now going over to Simon. So Simon, over to you.
Right, okay. Well, I guess this is kind of old news to start with. Obviously, the stamp duty holiday has been extended. So as we know, it's going to continue as it is until the end of the 30th of June, at which point it will reduce. So there's still a stamp duty holiday, but only up to 250,000, and that's kind of go on now until the end of September. So what the Chancellor has been able to do is really kind of stave off that cliff edge that we thought was coming. So Tim now, as you rightly heard earlier on, has turned the ship right around and is out there raiding his piggy bank, getting ready to buy, which also a lot of other people are doing. So I in terms of a barometer, I'm doing mortgages up and down the country, up north, northeast, northwest, south, southeast, as well as London. I can't say that London's really picked up as much yet, but what I am really seeing is, sales have picked straight back up. Waiting times for valuers have also shot back up in terms of trying to get valuers out to your property. Unless you've asked Wayne, who will make a special exception for anyone on the call tonight, I'm sure. Yes, so the cliff edge has been avoided, which is really great news. Fabulous. In terms of where I work and where we're all of us tonight, kind of centre on investors, it's a little bit different to the normalised property market. So whilst Wayne has been able to give us some great sort of figures, and also Teresa, the actual investor market still looks to be quite strong. Okay, so I'm just going to go a quick roundup of funding and finance that's out there right at the moment. So 80% LTV products at the moment from 2.09. That's not for a limited company, that's for a non-limited company, but it's still a really cheap deal if you've got mortgages still in your own name. HMOs, and that includes limited company borrowing up to 6 rooms. From 75% LTV, 2.89%. So that's a great rate. We didn't see these rates, or haven't seen the rates like that for the whole period of coronavirus up until now. If you've got a mini-mo, so that's an HMO of 3 or 4 rooms, and it's not a limited company. There are a couple of lenders out there doing 1.79%. The only stipulation is that they all need to be on one tenancy agreement. So that typically might be a student HMO. But nonetheless, what a fabulous rate. And there are rumours that have been kind of circulating in the background to me from various different lending institutions and BDMs of those lending institutions, that's the business development managers, that the 85% LTV products are probably coming back in the not too distant future. So that kind of tells you where lenders really see the market at the moment in terms of how, if there is going to be a correction, it's only going to be a soft landing. They think, that's not what we think necessarily. However, the chances of the dip that we thought was coming potentially this year looks at the moment a little unlikely. And that's really it for mortgages. Please reach out if I can help anyone watching, please.
And finally, we'll go over to Tim. So Tim, could you take us through this particular slide?
Oh, well, thank you. Wrong slide.
Wrong slide. That was last month's. Let's go to this month.
It's worth repeating. Let's have that one again. I do love that one. Go on, Simon. Here we go. I love this one.
Go on then.
Buffett.
Why don't we have that one?
I think it's wonderful. No matter how great your talent or efforts, some things just take time. You can't produce a baby in 1 month by getting 9 women pregnant. I think what I said last time, and I'll repeat it because I love that quote, is actually property is a long-term game. A lot of people come into it suddenly expecting money overnight. And this is Warren Buffett, and who's laughing there but Bill Gates. Warren Buffett's merely the 7th wealthiest man in the world. So I think it's a long-term game, and I just love that quote. But if we can go back to this month's slide. Thank you. This is probably the last time I'm going to do these. I think it's the 8th time we've done it, because actually there's been so much change in the last year. But actually, as I said earlier, and I think other people have said, I think things have now settled down. Now, I think we've actually been doing better than some firms. I think our market share has been increasing. But whenever I think it's going to go down, as you can see, it doesn't really. It got a bit quieter over December. Well, that always happens at Christmas. But as you can see, March, has it gone down? No. Weirdly, it's even busier than it was last September. It's gone berserk as far as we're concerned. So I think perhaps we're a little bit out of proportion. We're doing a little bit better than some firms in terms of our conveyancing. But I do think it does show overall that the housing market is strong, that all the dip we expected simply hasn't happened, and that for the time being, or God willing, we're going to have a reasonably strong, reasonably buoyant market. In the medium term, all sorts of threats, but there always are. But I think at the moment it's reasonably strong. So that's really my news for the month. One thing I didn't put on a slide, if perhaps I can take an opportunity of saying at this stage, previous months I may have mentioned our free legal masterclasses. These are basically a series of online talks that I do about various aspects of law. The idea is not to replace a solicitor, but to give you more information, more education, so you can limit your risk and make more profit. We've just finished season 1, so the 6th one was done last week. We're just about to release them, the recorded versions, one by one. So if anybody's interested in seeing any of those, please do get in touch. I'll be posting about those on social media. And then we'll in fact be starting season 2. They've gone so well. We have a season 2 lining up probably from May the 20th. Again, I'll probably push that next month. But in the meantime, if you want to be on our mailing list, I'm tim.bishop@bishopslaw.com. You should be able to find me fairly easily. Get in touch and I'll put you on our list. Thank you, Simon.
Perfect. Thank you ever so much, Tim, and thank you ever so much for the panel members as well. This is a live session, and if you are on the platforms, Facebook, Twitter, or indeed on YouTube, then you can ask your question, and I will be looking many times to my left, which is just to make sure I pick up all of your questions. And we've got a bunch of questions as well, so I'm going to pick them up on WhatsApp. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen, actually. Just got to find out how I do that. Let's stop that share right now. Here we are. So we're back in the floor. So the first question I'm going to just read out, which is, this is from Chris. Chris says he has a small portfolio of 7 properties, 2 are repayment and the rest are interest only. I'm not making that much money on them. I would definitely need advice on moving forward with regards to this. Also, 2 of them have mortgages on them, which will be due in a few years' time. And I know the mortgage companies aren't renewing mortgages. Advice would be much appreciated. So on this one, I'm going to go over to Bronwen first, just to see what your thoughts are, and someone who's not making as much money as they really ideally would like, why that might be the case and how they could recover that position. And Simon Hodgson, take your views on those mortgage points.
Yeah, well, thanks for that, Chris. Those are really useful questions, because this is what most investors are always grappling with. You've got to understand your overall portfolio and which properties are giving you the sort of return on investment that you need. Now, if you've got some that are not giving you the right return, there's a number of reasons. Now, you're on repayment mortgages, so maybe those repayment mortgages are actually quite expensive. That would be worth looking at with your broker. Some of them are coming up for renewal. So again, I think this is going to be a specialist question for your mortgage broker, because if those existing lenders are no longer renewing mortgages, then that probably tells me that they're not necessarily high street lenders or competitive lenders. So you may find that you're going to get a better deal on your mortgage if you were to have a conversation with, say, Simon. And then, in terms of rental, are you managing them yourselves? Are you paying someone else to manage them for you? Look at all of your costs, all of your detail costs, particularly things like, well, it depends. It depends if they're single lets. You don't say, but I assume that they're single lets. Are you getting market rates for them? Have people, have you been able to increase your rent? And, look at the local market and see what other people are charging. Perhaps consider interest only mortgages, because you do get a higher return. Obviously, you're not paying down your debt. However, if you're in the location, if it's in the right location and the location is likely to increase in value over time, and again, you've got to do research, then maybe switching to interest only could increase your cash flow. So depends what your aims are. So happy to another time, but I'm sure other people have got other opinions.
Shall I chip in there?
Please do.
Okay. Obviously, they haven't said who those mortgage lenders are, but there's a fair assumption I think we can make from that it is of the Mortgage Express type mortgages. So typically they might well have been advised and only taken out a 10 or a 15-year term, which is kind of why they're coming to the end of those products. Also, it would suggest, and although geographically I don't know that, but I'm going to make this assumption that if they're not making a huge amount of money on them, yield-wise, they're probably based in the southeast or the southwest. So property investing is one of those really weird things. We all strive for the greatest yield, and yield definitely is a great thing to do, especially if you're looking to give up your job as income. However, the other side of property is capital growth. Now, if you're owning those properties in the southwest or the southeast, capital growth is likely to have been very strong, and we've got to work out how that balances each other out. So I guess really we need to do a quick review of where you're at, look at those repayment vehicles and repayment mortgages. It's definitely not a bad idea longer term as investors, and all of the guys on the call tonight here, as their mortgages mature and their portfolios are maturing, are using repayment vehicles to pay the debt down. However, that's not always how we start out, and quite often interest only is the way we start out to gear up, to leverage, and to maximize the return on investment, recycle cash and go on. So we definitely need to see to see the portfolio, to see who the lenders are, to be able to put together proper advice. Yes, please pass our details on if you could, Mr. M.
Certainly shall do. Let's move on to a question by David. David has said, we have renovated a flat in our existing portfolio and want to transfer it from private ownership to an existing limited company in the same portfolio. What are the capital gains tax implication of repairs and improvements? And what are the annual tax implications of repairs and improvements? David, great question, and many people on this platform will be asking the same question. What are the tax implications of moving to a limited company, and what's the tax implications of using a limited company? Simply put, if you're moving a property from your personal name to a company, you will be paying capital gains tax on the gain on that property, and that could be 18% as a basic rate taxpayer, or indeed 28% as a high rate taxpayer. You've also got this small thing that the guys will keep talking about, which is stamp duty land tax. So if we go by what Wayne said, that means you could have a double tax by selling that property to your limited company. Boo-hoo. So that could be an expensive tax stuff. Whenever I speak to anyone talking about moving properties to an owned company, I ask them to think twice. The reason for that is because on most times I've seen it takes on average 12 years to get a payback of any benefit at all. And to be honest, I'd rather invest my money elsewhere rather than waste my time with that. And in regards to tax differences between using personal name versus limited company, costs where you get a tax relief, apart from mortgage interest, typically is the same. So if you've got repair costs, then you want to reduce your income, then you can certainly do that. So there's no real changes, but I would always ask your accountant to take you through that process, and always speak to your solicitor and indeed your mortgage broker about moving properties to companies. And typically I would go over to Simon Hodgson, but I'm not going to this time. I'm going to vary it because I want to go over to Teresa, because this is the live session. This is the more interesting aspect to what we do. I want to go over to Teresa and then over to Tim, because if someone happens to move a property to a limited company, which they previously owned, don't they have to move their ASTs? And isn't there going to be some differences in terms of legal matters? So starts with you, Teresa, and then over to Tim with that question.
It helps, doesn't it, if you put yourself on off mute? I mean, basically, if there's a change of, are you just saying it's just move? Is it the same landlord just moving to a limited company? All right.
Yes, so moving it from personal name to their company.
Right, yeah, so there's no change of you know, AST there. I was just going to say, if you're changing landlord, then you do need to fill in a form to notify your tenant, but otherwise, no, there wouldn't be any need to change the contract.
Okay, that'd be interesting. Tim, what's your thoughts?
Legal costs. If you're transferring it, effectively it's conveyancing, so there will be legal costs involved. Just all adds up to, as you say, your 12 years. So yeah, you're passing it over. It's not free. You're transferring the property across. So yes, conveyancing fees will be incurred.
Perfect. Thank you ever so much for those contributions. Archie, age 18. So any 17-year-old that is watching Minecraft on YouTube, stop watching that. It will fry your brain. You should be watching this instead. Archie, age 18, repeat that, is an aspiring property investor with £5,000 saved. How many 18-year-olds can say that? Once the start the process, how would you advise them to take property investment journey? And I appreciate this is a long time ago for you, Paul Hilliard, but can you remember way back when you first started property? What kind of advice would you give someone like your grandchild in terms of investing in property?
I'd just like to point out, I don't have any grandchildren. Thank you, Simon. I was going to say, as one of the people who can relate to the Archie, I would say that if you've got no background, no education, and it's your first time that you're going into the property market, which I suspect it is, then I would strongly recommend that you look at getting some property education. So without putting too fine a point on it, get in contact with Bronwen to have a conversation, at least to get some initial grounding on what you can and cannot do. But the other thing I would suggest is look at doing rent to rent. And if you don't know what that is, again, speak to someone like Bronwen, because I would suggest rent to rent is going to be a good starting point. You are going to make mistakes at some stage, and at least they'll be limited to your investment, which is going to be it's a big amount for you, but compared to what you could lose if you went and bought a property or the wrong type of property, then it's a good way to get your foot into the door. It's a very good income generating strategy as well. So again, look at that. So that's what I would highly recommend. Or go along to one of your property meetings when they come back on stream and see about networking with someone who's experienced, perhaps. Or take a punt and meet up with someone who's similar age and form yourself a network group and go, yeah, that's what I can do. But I think, great thoughts. Certainly something I encourage my children to do when they were younger, and they've not looked back. And so, yeah, highly recommend you do something akin to that. But let's see what if Bronwen can add further on that.
Absolutely. Hi, Archie. Well done, firstly, for raising £5,000. Can you hear me all right? Yeah. So well done, amazing, £5,000. That's fantastic at your age, and great that you're interested in property, because now is the time to learn. So adding anything else, well, I've got two people learning with me who are also 18. One started when he was 17 learning with me. And, it's great because you've got a different perspective on property and a lot of enthusiasm. So I would certainly look to network with other people locally, ideally, and then there may be other people your age, but also you could look over the shoulder of someone else that's doing this stuff. Nothing better than actually looking and learning by seeing what other people are doing, and that if that's local, that's fantastic, because you've probably got some time. Depends what else you're doing with your time, but you've probably got time to do that. There's loads of stuff online, of course, as well, lots of information, but much better to learn with somebody that you can relate to, that is going to give you up-to-date stuff. So just one word of warning, looking online is great, but there's a lot of myths out there, a lot of misinformation that is portrayed as real. So, come and keep asking questions of this group and you'll get the reality of that. So well done, Archie. Happy to have a chat with you another time.
Perfect. It is good to see an 18-year-old getting interested in property. If you are watching this again, don't forget to make sure that you post your question, whether on Twitter, Facebook, or indeed on YouTube. It is a live session, so make sure that you give this channel a good old thumbs up and make sure you subscribe to this channel as well. In the meantime, do ask your question. We are live and we'll answer it. Billy has asked a question, rent to SA question. So this is someone who I guess is using a landlord and then taking the property, moving it to a service accommodation. And what are the typical duration of contracts you would take out with this type of landlord? Also, how do you insert a break clause of say 6 months and how do you convince the landlord to accept it? Teresa, what's your thoughts on that?
I was hoping you wouldn't go to me then because I don't know about serviced accommodation.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that is a specialist field. We don't run any contracts for that type of.
But I guess it's taking the role reversal because it's the landlord that is doing a normal AST term, and I rather suspect that Billy is looking to then take it out as a tenant. So is there a way that Billy can put something in there to say, well, actually, I want a break clause within 6 months? I don't think there is, to be fair, but your thoughts?
Well, I would even say like for a contract between the landlord and the person who's doing the serviced accommodation, it doesn't need to be a specialist agreement. Yeah, it's not as straightforward because, it's all the legal responsibilities, if it was like licensing in the area, it would have to be, set up properly so that the landlord was protected from any sort of negligence by the serviced accommodation. Yeah.
Tim, what's your thoughts?
There are some practical issues to start off with because normally if you are converting to SA, you may well have conversion costs in terms of whatever furniture, etc. you're putting in. So that might not be very useful on a 6 month. Again, in terms of whether you can get a break clause in there, it's purely negotiation. It's whatever you can persuade the landlord to do. I'm not sure there are any particular tips apart from standard negotiation. Be open, be kind, try to think of reasons why it makes him money, but ultimately it's simply a choice. If the landlord doesn't want to insert a break clause, there's nothing you can do about it. And the other thing with SA, I think sometimes people do forget the legalities. So, for example, insurances, and also particularly it's more really a risk, I think, for the landlord. So, in terms of what does their mortgage say, what does their lease say? A lot of leases actually don't allow you to sublet or actually to even let to more than one household. So there are all sorts of restrictions there, and I think a lot of people don't look at those. So there are tricky things, but in terms of negotiating with the landlord, it's commercial. Whatever you can persuade him to do. If he desperately needs you, you might get him to agree. If he doesn't, you won't.
Can I add into that, Simon?
Well, wait, no, you can't because you didn't put your hand up. So we do have you are the one last month that set the bar of making sure that we would all put this virtual hand up, and you're steamrolling in as though you just ignored it from last month. Don't lower your standards, Wayne, to the other panel members that were here a few months ago. It's just simply outrageous. So I'm for that matter, I'm going to go to Simon Hodgson, who has got his virtual hand up. So let's go for that hand up. And then I'll come over to you, Wayne.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Now, I might be about to repeat something that Bronwen's going to say, which is part of educating yourself would be that when you go into a deal, in an ideal world, you want a plan A, a plan B, and if you can squeeze a plan C and a plan C. Now, I would question if you're looking to put a 6 months break clause into a deal that you possibly haven't got a plan B. And if you haven't got a plan B and you think you need a break clause at month 6, perhaps that's not the deal for you, particularly, maybe. Or if you're not sure and what have you, education. And Bronwen might be the person to reach out to help you get yourself educated as to what makes a good deal, what isn't a good deal, and how to build in plan A and plan B, etc., etc. But yeah, if apart from that, yeah, the mortgage would also need to be changed without almost a shadow of doubt.
Perfect. And now we will go to Wayne.
As you can see, I remembered how to put the hand up. I'd forgotten. And I also know there's other emoticons here, which are fantastic. So I'm going to have a play with those. I wanted to add, and just follow on from what Tim said, really. I've been involved on a commercial basis with break clauses a lot over the years, some hefty ones for companies like HSBC, National Car Parks, various other organisations that I've worked on as a landlord for, and also as a tenant. Break clauses are all very well and good if they're enforceable and actionable at the time. And what I mean by that, as Tim is going to say, a clever lawyer will draft the break clause in a way that suits whoever has asked them to draft it, and a clever surveyor will come in and ensure that whoever wants to exercise the break clause make it as difficult as possible for them to do so. As an example, there was a case, and I believe it was from memory, it was a city case, gone out of my head, but whereby a tenant tried to exercise a break clause in a commercial property. The surveyor went in, measured the thickness of the paint on the walls, and it should have had 2 coats, and it only had 1. And the break clause was frustrated. So all I'm saying on break clauses is, if you're going to rely on it, be wary, get a good lawyer like Tim involved, because you do need to ensure it's drafted properly. And in particular, if there are any time of the essence things that you need to do in that break clause, make sure you've done it in good time, because generally speaking, break clauses will have a time threshold there. So give yourself plenty of time. I always say to my clients I work with, if you've got a break, then you really want to be looking a year out from the break to start planning, ready to exercise it, so you're ready to go when you need to.
Perfect. I'm going to stay with the comedy duo of Wayne and Simon here, because Jordan has asked the question, why do mortgage valuers simply not put the same value that I'm buying the property? And rather suspecting that Jordan is quite frustrated because the valuation of the property is lower. What is the reason typically that might happen? And we'll go over to Wayne first and then over to Simon.
Reasons, well, there's many reasons. Let me just take a step back just to explain valuation to people, because there's 2 aspects to valuation. And if you Google the Mallinson report from 1995, you'll see there's a big thick report on the difference between value and worth, because the 2 things are different. What a property is worth to one person isn't necessarily the market value. So that might be one reason why a valuation will be different to the purchase price. So for instance, as an example, I was once asked to value a property, and they were buying it for their parents. So they were willing to pay more than the market said the property was worth. So to them personally, the property was worth more than the market value. Now, valuers, you often hear the phrase down valuation. It's a bit misleading, really, because there's no such thing as a down valuation. There's an opinion on value that's provided by a particular person. And it's perfectly acceptable for 2 valuers to have a different opinion at the same time on the same property within tolerances. And the courts have decided the tolerances, and they vary depending upon the circumstances of the property in question. But that could be one reason. And in the current market, let's just take the step back to what we talked about earlier. House prices have shot up in some places 8% on average. That's a huge increase in a year on top of house price growth for many years. So as some panel members here have touched on, there was an expectation, and there still is an expectation in some people's minds, that there's going to be a correction. As a valuer approaching that, whilst you should discount that kind of thing, and it shouldn't form part of your methodology, if you like, and it won't, everybody has unconscious and conscious biases. And if you're working for a client, in the back of your mind, you are going to be concerned that the market is going to change. In addition to that, finding comparables in a market that's rapidly growing, bearing in mind that property sales happen historically and the information is historic to a degree. So a valuer looking at a property today may be using comparables from 6 months or so ago, which may be 4%, 5% out compared to the sale price today. So there's various reasons like that could be the question. But generally speaking, valuation is an opinion. It's not a science. And 2 different people can have different opinions on the same property. What I will add to that, just coming back to down valuations. A down valuation is often used by estate agents, and they use that as an emotive term. The media pick up on it too. The reason I say there's no such thing is because the first valuation happens when the mortgage valuer carries out the valuation. They have a specific methodology that they have to work to, and they are accountable, they are regulated, they can be sued. Your estate agent doesn't have any of that. They can effectively make a number up. And some do, depends on the circumstances. As an example, if you're an estate agent who wants to sell a property in a particular area where you don't normally do business, it's on a busy high street, let's say, then you may tell a seller that they'll get £100,000 when it's really only worth 80, because you want to get your board in that person's front garden. That's great advertising for estate agents, because most of us, we see an estate agent's board, we'll phone the local estate agent to use them. So there's various reasons why a valuer may not agree with your purchase price, but also another reason, and it's a good one I've had thrown at me recently by certain estate agents, is because when you put your offer in, you're putting it in subject to survey. At that point, you haven't seen the property properly. And in particular in COVID, where lots of purchases are being made when people haven't even viewed the property physically, they've done it online. So the surveyor goes in, valuer goes into the property, finds defects that you didn't know were there, for instance, dampness as an example, or something in the roof space where you didn't look. How could your offer have been reflective of the defects that you didn't know about and the estate agent didn't know about or tell you about? Well, by default, it couldn't have been. Therefore, the valuer may well be adjusting the valuation to account for defects that you weren't aware of. And lastly, in closing, and before you go over to Simon, is always remember the offer is just an offer. You can renegotiate. It's not gesundering, it's not gesumping, their emotive words again. If you feel that the price you offered doesn't reflect the value following a survey, for instance, renegotiate it. It's perfectly acceptable.
Thanks for that, Wayne. You are so close for me to say Expelliarmus in the Harry Potter sense. But very useful for insights, to be fair. Top that, Simon, if you can.
Right, okay, I'm going to take the analogy that Wayne gave us, right? This isn't independent financial advice, okay? I'm using analogy to try and make a point. If you imagine that you can deposit money with a bank as savings, and you want your savings to be as safe as they possibly could be, yeah? And on the other side of the coin, that bank is lending out money on the back of an estate agent's valuation. Do you think your money is as safe as if they sent out a valuer who's RICS qualified like Wayne? And the answer, I hope, would be probably not. And that's kind of why the banks don't use estate agents, because estate agents are kind of trying to blow smoke up they're trying to get, if you like, clients on board. Yeah. So, and also, banks will borrow money from institutional funding lines. Okay. Okay. Thanks, Bronwen. Institutional funding lines, and those funding lines want to know that their money's been lent out safely. So whilst the credit crunch was a long way ago, we're all aware of what the credit crunch was, the fact that there was toxic debt within loan books, and banks' loan books weren't all they were cracked up to be. So it is vitally important we send out a professional to value the property and make sure that the bank lends money out at 75% loan to value, if that's what their perimeters are. So their loan book is watertight, yeah, and can be invested in by institutional money, etc., etc., etc. So we can't use, other methodology other than that. Can opinions vary? Yes, they do. Wayne's kind of covered that off really nicely. But yeah, I'm going to keep it sweet and short because I think Wayne covered all the points really well there, to be fair.
I hope you saw my emoji, which is speed up. I love that. That's now in my power play. So I'll certainly be using that one going forwards. So it says that I now can't take it off. That's a shocker. So it just tells me to rip now, which is backfired. So what I would suggest we'll do is go to this. Simon, you are going to stay on this question because Abby Doan has asked a question. By the way, I've just completely messed up your name, so I do apologise. But they've asked the question, how readily available are lenders for property investments in LLP structures? Now, Simon, when it comes to someone buying in an LLP structure, the LLP is technically a separate entity, but from a tax perspective, it's taxed in their own hands. So it's an interesting conversation. How do lenders see LLP?
Right. Okay. So LLP lending is broadly very similar to limited company lending. So the suite of lenders that are available out there to us are broadly similar. Rate-wise, it's that spread of rates from 2.79 and upwards. So you're not going to get the really cheap rates of lenders in your own name. Yeah, there you go. Short, quick answer for you, Simon.
That's good. It's almost too quick for me, actually. I've got to be honest with you. So another question is, Sadir has asked, I've lent to my limited company £100,000, bought 4 properties and get 3k per month and 36k per year. I can pay back Dutch loan without paying corporation tax. And in fact, anyone that's using a limited company, typically the company will have nothing involved in it at all. There's no money inside of a limited company. So you'll get 2 sources of money. One will be the banks in the form of lending from the mortgage lenders, and the second one will be yourself, unless you're using relative threads. And the nice thing about that is that if you extracted that money back out of the limited company, it is tax-free in your hands. More to the point, did you know that you can earn up to £5,000 tax-free interest from your own Dutch's loans? Something that we're investigating is creating a platform to do direct to ISA loans to your limited company. So be on the watch out for that as much as we can get processed and sign off for that, because that could be hugely beneficial for a lot of people. Daniel's asked a question. Hi, Simon, I'm looking to buy commercial property for non-TOCG. I won't go into that. If I buy VAT registered company, can I claim back the VAT on the purchase price, even the SDLT is higher? And that's an interesting question, because if you buy residential property, typically you do not have VAT. VAT is exempt, which means you don't claim back VAT on any refurbishment costs, but neither do you charge out VAT. Commercial property is slightly different. You can indeed be charged VAT, but you can, Daniel, for your answer, claim back that VAT. So that's good. The issue here is that your tenants typically will be charged VAT on their lease. Now, for some businesses, that's absolutely fine because they can reclaim it back themselves. But some tenants may not be too happy if all of a sudden you're slapping on a VAT charge on their rental costs. So always be on the lookout for that. Billy's asking another question on this is all YouTube live. I will be going back to my WhatsApp in a second, but Billy's asked the question, what kind of due diligence and research can you do to determine if an area is suitable for SA? And as always, I always have to come back to Bronwen and Paul Hilliard when it comes to service accommodation. So Bronwen, over to you first. Okay, great question, Billy. Thank you. Well, I mean, if you put yourself in the shoes of somebody wanting to rent a property, be it for holiday or workers, you've got to look at its location and say, well, what's the likely use? So you've got to put yourself in different people's shoes and go, okay, is this somewhere they would want to go? I would look on Airbnb and just see what the competition is in a certain area. That's always easy to do. And I would go and talk to, well, I would talk to some local people who are doing it, actually. You'd be amazed that people are more than happy to share their experiences. And, you know, it's a competitive market supposedly out there, but we all do slightly different things. So I talk regularly to people locally about what I'm doing and we share. So I would do some networking, find out who else is doing serviced accommodation and find out what their views are. But yeah, if you give us your location, you never know, some of us might actually know the areas and give you some ideas. Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Billy. It is a good question. One of the issues you've got with looking at doing your research is that there are over 100 OTAs online. This is online travel agents, and those are the people who handle bookings for service accommodation. So it varies from the likes of booking.com, Airbnb, which you can do online very easily, to companies like Silverdor. And as I said, there's hundreds of online travel agents. So you have to know your area and do your research. So just check online what is being let and why. The other thing is what is your target market? You know, if you're looking on doing holiday lets, would you look in the centre of, well, for example, I've got service accommodation unit in a place called Warsaw. which is the home of the leather industry. So unless someone's into leather, why would they come there for a holiday? Well, it's close to Birmingham, it's close to the NEC, and it's therefore commutable because it's straight down the M6 into Solihull or Birmingham. So you've got to look at what the opportunities. So do a search of what amenities are around. Also check locations of train stations, because how are you possible guests going to arrive at the location? Are they going to come by car, in which case provide parking? If they're going to come by train, then near to a station. If they're flying in, near to an airport. So again, look at that. There are 100, probably overdoing it a bit, but there are loads and loads of different lets. I mean, I always say you can let an accommodation for, depending on your mortgage, up to a year, because you can do company lets, corporate lets, or as little as an hour, but we won't go into that type of accommodation service.
We're talking about leather and short-term accommodation, Paul, honestly. I'm just going to give a quick example, because I don't know where Billy is, but where my holiday lets are, they used to be let quite regularly for holidays, but during COVID, I've had people who need to, who are working, they can't book guest houses or hotels, but they need to be in one place with their colleagues to do a particular job. So we're talking about electricians, virgin people, they're having to work. So we've been letting the property from that point of view, and then long lets for people who are having their house done up. So, families can literally move straight in because it's furnished. They're having an extension done, or they're doing all the flooring or something. And they can't, it's very few places they can go and stay as a family. So we've been doing that for several months in terms of bookings. And that works really well too. So just a couple of examples there, very different tenant types.
Perfect. Thank you ever so much, Bronwen, for that. There was a slight pause, I appreciate. Professionalism at best. Let's go back to the WhatsApp group. So there was one question asked by Brian, talking about how to find the property. Now auctions are running red hot and vendors are getting full asking price from multiple people currently. Maybe different once SDLT holiday is extended, but where are the best places to get a good deal? Bronwen, I'll stick with you if that's okay with that question.
Yep. So yeah, where are the best places? My goodness. Well, auctions have been crazy. They've been crazy for the last year. But if you're looking to sell a property, I would suggest that's quite a good place to go. Well, where are the good deals? I mean, you've got to look for motivated sellers, in my opinion. I mean, if you're not going to be using auctions, then you need to be thinking about how can I find people that need to sell quickly or that are very motivated. And there I'm talking about people who, maybe they're going through a divorce, maybe they've got to move quickly because they're going abroad, maybe they've had a fall through. So there's a lot of people offering in this market and offering more than they can afford. So what I'm seeing a little bit of is that the valuations don't necessarily fit what they've been offering, or they can't get the mortgages. So the property offer will fall through. Now that can be several weeks after they've offered. And then that person has found their dream home in Cornwall or outside London and moving out of the city, and the chain is broken. So if you can get really good relationships with estate agents and you can show that agent that you can move quickly and that you're an investor and you may, here's my bank balance, here's my cash, you can negotiate really, really well. And I've done that before very, very well, where an agent has gone, oh, please, I know you can move quickly. You've told me you can. If you can step in and save this, then I'll be eternally grateful, And then who does he come to next when he's got something he wants to sell quickly? He comes to you. So I still think that relationships with estate agents is actually really important. But you've got to have a good education and talk the language and understand things from their point of view. This is a specialist subject I have, so always happy to share a webinar I've got on working with agents, because they've got a really tough job. if you can understand how to work with them and have some empathy with that, but also show them what you're looking for, they can, in fact, start to help you and work with you. So that's my point of view. Paul, I think you've got some views as well.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, Tim mentioned earlier that I shared his viewpoint that quarter two was going to be a time when it was going to be a buying opportunity. So I actually jumped the gun last week. Once I knew that stamp duty was being extended, the holiday was being extended, and I bought at auction. And I think, auctions are a good place to buy if you do know what you're doing. So don't forget, have a look at auction, because what I did last week, I bought a mini HMO, paid 156 for it, plus fees and stamp duty came to 168, and I'm intending to refinance that at 250. So 70% at 250 gives you 175. That's the way to do it if you're experienced enough. And the best person to learn that besides me is going to be Bronwen. So go and get educated. So I hope, don't be disappointed. Don't be dispirited by the fact that auctions are red hot. There's a lot of auctions around at the moment and a lot of properties in there. So do your due diligence.
Well done, Paul. Fantastic. Good to hear the good news. It's certainly possible. You've just got to know what you're doing. So well done.
Let's move over to Wayne. I think you've got some ideas and some concepts.
Button going. Oh yeah, unmute it works, doesn't it? I'll be quick this time. So I'll say in short terms, a couple of strategies. The key thing is with anything is being there before others. I think it's fair to say. So create the opportunities rather than wait for them to come to you. So what I would say, firstly, draft a letter or contact me and I'll give you a copy of the letter that I've already drafted. And send it to estate agents. Send the letter to estate agents outlining exactly what you're looking for. And if you're a cash buyer, tell them that. If it's a refurb you're looking for, tell them you're looking for refurbs. If you're looking to buy, refurb, flip it, tell them that you're looking to buy, refurb and flip it, and you'll use them to resell it possibly, because then they can see double commissions. So there's one tactic. Another tactic is take the same letter, walk around the area and drop it through people's doors, whether it's people's doors with for sale signs or people's doors that haven't got a for sale sign but might be putting one up tomorrow. You'll get there first. So again, it's about being proactive. I have actually created on my totallymoving.com website an interactive map where you can upload your property requirements and tell people that you're looking to buy in a particular area, and sellers can put their property on there so you can find them. It's only just been launched and it's not taken off as yet, but it's there, and it's a new way for buyers and sellers to contact each other. It's all about communication, as Bronwen says. So get in there first, and auctions can still be a good place. One other thing to think about, don't just consider what your budget is, think above your budget and come down from it. As an example, the property I live in now, it was 50k over what we could afford, and we paid 50k less just by negotiating it and coming in at the right time. If you look on Rightmove, you can see how long properties have been advertised for. Have a look for the ones that have been on for a while and go and knock on the door or speak to the agent and tell them that you're ready to go. That wasn't as quick as I've meant it to be, sorry. We'll do better.
The wand was at ready. The wand was at ready. I'm going to whiz through some questions because there's plenty of questions being fired up. So let's go for it in the quick fire round. Tony's asked the question, is there a way for property investors to benefit from the new 130% super deduction capital allowances? That's a great question, Tony. So there is this huge talk about 130% capital allowances. Capital allowances typically can't be used for property investments. Typically, you will find capital allowances for either commercial properties or indeed service accommodation holiday lets. And the kind of things they cover off is solar panels, computer equipment, tractors, lorries, vans. Who cares? Office chairs, desks. So if you have got a business and you're using that kind of equipment in your business, you can claim that if it's trade business. Refrigeration, compressors, foundry equipment, etc. So it is something that you can look at, Tony, but you probably do need to get some advice on that. Special Cali has asked a question on YouTube as well. Is bridge finance available for the purchase of short lease properties to also include borrowing from the lease extension? If so, what is the criteria for securing this finance? So let's go, guys. Let's give us some rapid fire answers to these bunch of questions that have been firing in. So Simon, I know this could be a challenge, but give it a go anyway.
There we go. Right. Okay. So largely this will depend on whether the seller has triggered clause 42 in the lease extension process. If they haven't, it will be nigh on impossible to borrow that lease extension cost. If it can be proven that that has been done, then I can probably find a way of helping you fund some of that for sure.
God, he's so quick. I haven't even got to around to the next question. Okay, next question is, hi experts. My 2 children have a help to buy ISA and are planning to use this for the funds of deposit, another entrepreneurial set of kids, to buy property. Can they rent rooms to friends, colleagues when they live there? Teresa and Tim, over to you. Can they do that?
I'm really sorry. I was actually typing in the chat box to you, Simon. So
don't worry about it. This is the short fire question session.
I wasn't even listening. What was the question?
Right, don't
worry. Tim, go first. Tim, first.
Go on, you go first.
I presume you can, depending really what if you lease the property, there may be some restrictions on that. But apart from that, yes, you can lease to other people, but provided that the mortgage and the lease, if you've got leasehold property, says you can.
Okay, we've got another bunch of. Sorry, Teresa, did you want to chip in?
No, because I'm not with it.
Okay,
I don't really know the question.
Don't worry. I'm going to go through these questions. So the guys that put their hands up, I will come back to you if I feel like it. Okay, so Social 2020 has asked this question. May I ask about capital gains and transferring a property to me currently let as a residential to a company? Yes, Social 2020, if you listened earlier, there was indeed the implication of a capital gains tax, which will be charged on the gain. So if you bought a property for 100,000, is now worth 200, you've now made £100,000 gain, could be subject to 18% as a basic rate taxpayer and 28% as a high rate taxpayer. So do make sure that you speak to your accountant very, very quickly before you do anything. T has asked the question. T, hello T. How much should we expect to pay a solicitor? Tim, be ready to review a legal pack of a property before an auction. Does Tim provide this type of service and perhaps a discount for listening into this? So nicely, cheekily done there, T. He'll put on an extra 10% just for that. So Tim, what's your thoughts?
Yes, we certainly do quite a lot of auctions. Offhand, I don't know the price. I don't run them myself. I don't run cases. But if you ping me an email or contact me, I'll get one of the team to contact you with a quote.
Marvelous.
Paul will know, won't you, Paul? He's just done one. How much did you pay?
Don't forget, I'm qualified as a lawyer, so I didn't need to. I read my own. I did see an advert which said somewhere between 30 and 50. I don't know what you get for 30, but 50 sounds more the going rate, personally.
Yeah, they might read the first cover.
£50.
£50 for, I think it's just to do the initial review and say, don't forget you've got other fees hidden away here.
Wow.
That's what was advertised.
I would check whether they're qualified.
Yeah, so would I. Brian has asked a question. Carrying on with this quick fire, because we've got just 15 minutes. Want to get every question answered now. Brian's asked a question. I have found a title split that would have no money left in. Do you know anyone I could work with? Bronwen, is that something you could support with or find someone to help them with?
Well, it depends what you're talking about. Helping with what? Financing it?
Yeah, I think so, right? I think it's
financing it. Well, yeah. I'd certainly email me. That's the answer. Email me some more details, because there could be some things that you might need to consider in terms of additional costs and things. Because the title split, I assume you're going to hold it or sell it, or you could joint venture with somebody. That's always a good way of working together. You could joint venture, you do all the work, share the profit or share the rental going forwards. I love JVs, absolutely love joint ventures.
So reach out to Bronwen, basically, is the suggestion. Yeah. She might be able to tie you up with someone else, Brian, to be fair. So you give her that. Bronwen, I'm going to stay with you. Ned S has asked a question at the panel. If you had 170k at the start of your investment journey, not a bad sum of money to start with. How would you spend it with the benefit of experience that you now have?
Okay, so I started with a similar amount, interestingly, and okay, I don't know what your overall aim is, but our aim was to replace our corporate income, or as much of it as we possibly could. So our aim was to get as much cash flow as possible, monthly cash flow. So we decided that we would try to create houses of multiple occupation with the highest return on investment. So you've got to look at, obviously, the deposit, 25% deposit. Can you improve a property and add value to it, like creating an HMO, like bringing a very old property into really, you know, the 21st century, and can you then refinance it? So what we did was we put the deposit monies in, we created an HMO, not easy, takes a lot of money as well. We then refinanced it on a commercial finance, which meant that we had it valued that much higher because it was valued as an HMO, and therefore we could take some of that money out. Now that meant that my cash flow actually went down a bit because the mortgage is more expensive. So I'm going to leave that there in terms of explanation. But what I would do is, yes, absolutely go out there, determine what your focus is, what your strategy is right for you, what the right strategy is for you, what you're trying to achieve, and then focus on that and go looking for assets, which is property. Yeah.
So Brian's asked a question. I'm just coming back to the questions that you've been fired at you before, Bronwen, this session. Brian's asked the question about using limited companies. Should you use the share structure to include your children to avoid inheritance tax? That is a very detailed question. One that I would say, if you posted it on LinkedIn, Facebook, and then you've got to reply, do yourself a favor, discard it. Always make sure you get an expert when it comes to inheritance tax. It's the worst tax to get wrong. So make sure that you do speak about that. And equally, when you've got that accountancy tax advice, make sure that you reach out to your mortgage broker, because they might not say that it's a good idea at all. Brian's also saying a different question. Buying bathrooms, kitchens, etc. Does the panel RICO buying through a club for landlords or buying direct? If direct, how? Not sure what that really means, but maybe if you go over to you, Paul Hilliard. I mean, buy from LNPG, surely that's better than go direct, right?
Absolutely. The idea of LNPG is that you have access within the buying group. So we've got over 5,000 landlords, 27,000 properties. So we are buying, for instance, over 3,000 kitchens a year from Magnets. We are their biggest contractual account. So we're bigger than housing associations, we're bigger than the councils. So we are very important to them. They don't want to lose our business. So we get the very best rate you can for a kitchen. We are buying something like 150 to 200 boilers a month from Worcester Bosch. So similarly, we're getting discounted rates at least a third below the price you can get online. So, you know, it's all relative. So if you think you can go out and negotiate on your basis of one person, even if you're buying 100 kitchens a year, it's still not, you know, 3,000 a year. So we are negotiating from strength. So that's why I would always recommend LNPG as a buying group. But, you know, I obviously have to declare I'm a shareholder director and therefore interested. But I'm also a member, and I'll be using LNPG to buy all the stuff I need for this mini HMO that I bought with the self-contained flats in the back. So, you know, that's the way to do it.
Talking of flats, here's a question. Again, this is from Mosin. Mosin's asked a question, funny enough. Is it a good time to invest in flats or stick to 2-3 bedroom houses? In particular, they're on about Surrey, but in general terms, I'm not a fan of flats unless you own the freehold because of the service charges that you pay. What's your particular thought process on that one, Paul?
I totally agree. You know, it's not something I started off buying flats and quickly learned that you know, you do have these hidden costs. So you've got ground rent, service charges, and you're not in control of your own destiny, because, you know, whatever the landlord wants to spend or has to incur, he'll recharge it to you, either apportioned basis or direct basis. So yes, I'm not a great fan. There's also the fact that you've got leasehold referral, leasehold control being referred at the moment and being looked at by the government. You've got the issues of these, anything in, I think it's greater than 18 meters. If it's got cladding, you're going to be in serious trouble. So, personally, if you look at 2 to 3 bed houses, you're spreading the risk far greater. You can look at HMOs, you can look at single family lets, a 1 or 2 bed flat. You can't really HMO a flat, I would suggest. So yeah.
One exception to that, I would suggest ex-council flats. So where the freeholders, the council, tend to have really long leases and very reasonable service charges, if any. Well, they obviously have some, but very low. So I think if you were to target those, that might work well. I have a council maisonette in Winchester, and it's very reasonable.
Very good, very good. Right, I'm going to go with some more questions. We've got thick and fast tonight. This is incredible to see the amount of questions. It's great to see the YouTube livers coming on for all their questions. Joe's asked a question, and I'm going to go to Tim first, then Simon. And the reason for that, I've got a continuation question for Simon. Question to Tim first then is, can I buy property for rental in my 7-year-old and 13-year-old's names, so children, for the purpose of inheritance tax and avoiding that? I would need a mortgage of 65%, which kind of scuppers it for me. But Tim, what's your thoughts on that particular transaction?
Well, I don't know any lenders who'd lend to 7-year-olds, or 13-year-olds for that matter. So I think it's probably a non-starter, I thought.
Yeah. Simon, over to you. I mean, is there a possibility of a personal guarantee?
Yeah, the only really real way of structuring that is alphabet shares. Give the children non-voting B or C class shares, and there are a few lenders out there that will do it at limited company lending rates.
There you go. There you go. Staying with you then, Simon, very, very quickly. What is the regulated mortgage? What are the advantages and disadvantages of an offset mortgage? So what's your thoughts on offset mortgages?
Okay, let's take the regulated part first. A regulated mortgage is a mortgage for a house that you're going to live in. An unregulated mortgage is generally a buy-to-let mortgage or a commercial mortgage, a property that you're going to rent out. Okay, so everything you do that you're going to live in is fully regulated by the FCA, and there are extra criteria that we have to go through under the Prudential Regulation Authority guidelines to provide advice effectively to the client. Offset mortgage, this isn't individual advice, but potentially you can have an offset mortgage whereby if you have a large pot of savings, you offset against the amount of money you've borrowed to buy your house, and potentially pay less in interest. Typically, though, they are slightly higher interest rate charges in the first place, and the savings that you might get from having the offset doesn't necessarily work out in reality. But it's a case-by-case basis.
Okay, I'm going to stay with you, Simon, if that's okay. It says here, Casa has asked the question, are HMO lenders still requesting a minimum tenancy of 2 years? I've never heard of 2-year tenancy requirement by a mortgage lender.
No, definitely not. They're not asking for that at all.
No, Casa, I think you need to get a better mortgage broker, I think, and Simon Hodgson is free and waiting for you. This is not a dating site, but Social 2020, what are your thoughts on the market for the next 12 to 18 months? Very open question. Wayne mentioned a correction. How will this affect the number of properties on the market? Let's go back to you, Bronwen, and let's go to you, Wayne.
Okay, so crystal ball time. I think a year ago we were all a little bit thoughtful about what was going to happen post-Brexit and post-COVID, and none of that came true anyway. And I've always been really positive, as most people know. I think if you get to know your marketplace today and you understand how to find motivated sellers, if there's a correction, well, there's still motivated sellers out there, so you can buy below market value. You can just keep a very close eye on the market. I don't see a big bubble like there was in the late 80s, where there was a problem with lenders. Lenders are desperate to lend, aren't they, Simon? So it's not about there's plenty of money there that people want to lend. So I think it's going to be about demand and supply. We're not building enough houses still. So the economics is still there, in my opinion. Simon, who else?
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to fire off some questions. Actually, I'm going to stay with the questions because I'm so keen to get this done. It says here, so Sukhdev has asked the question. Please, can you explain a bit more about Sadir's question of directors' loans and not paying corporation tax? I mean, to simply put, Sukhdev, if you've got money inside a limited company, which you personally loan to the company, if you wish to take that money out of the limited company, there is no corporation tax. There is no income tax, no VAT at all on that transaction. So can't explain it more than that. That's all there is to it. Fayaz has asked, Simon, can you tell Simon Hodgson to give me a call, please? I did say this is not a dating site, but clearly it's turning into that. Tony has asked a question, what is the criteria to be added to the WhatsApp group? Are you talking about, Simon? Oh, sorry, Tony, it's not really a WhatsApp group. It's just that if you registered for this event, then you could certainly ask your question as soon as you register. And the link to register for future events is always below this channel. So make sure that you do that. And so I was asking about the NRLA's group, which we've now posted. How do you do that professionally if buying in your own name initially? I'm not sure what that means, but Brian, if you can ask that question, then maybe we can do that there. Charles has asked, is VAT recoverable? My screen's just disappeared. Is VAT recoverable on projects for the conversion of existing offers which is not listed to residential use? VAT is indeed at different rates. The VAT is a conversion rate, so you have a commercial property, you're looking to move it to residential, and you have a reduction of VAT from 20% down to 5%. It's your builders and your tradespeople that would buy the materials at 20% from all the suppliers. They would reclaim the VAT themselves, and they would send you an invoice for 5%. So you do not need to register for VAT. You do not need to reclaim VAT, and you certainly do not need to go past go, but you do need to smash that like button on this video channel. So make sure you all do that straight away and subscribe as well. Brian's asked a question. It's a point about this pack that we all talked about earlier. He said Brian has paid £600 to review the legal pack, not £30, which, to be fair, £30 would probably buy you the review of the Harry Potter front cover, and that's about all. Someone, Resident Say Properties, has said, is Tim familiar with bridge finance? Probably not. He's a solicitor in question, but Simon Hodgson would be more palatable. But if you have a question about bridge finance, make sure you're asking it that question. Rachel has asked a question. I'd like to join LNPG to have 2 refurbs coming up. What is the discount code? Come on, Simon. Come on, Simon. You can give a discount code if you like, but come on, Mr. Aston Villa. What is the code? You must have an Aston Villa code, surely.
Special code just for this group. Use PH Papa Hotel 10, and you'll get 10% off.
I'm going to type that in. So PH10, yes?
Yes, please.
Okay, so here we go. I'm going to do this live so everyone knows it's live. And
I've got a webinar as well while you do that. I've got a webinar that I did with Paul just a few months ago that I'm happy to share with anyone the link. So email me and I will forward the link to you. You can watch that. It's about an hour long and it explains how LNPG works. So, you know, come and request that. It's also got the code on it at the end as well.
Okay, I think we're going to finish off with one question. I'm going to stick with you, Bronwen, because then you can close out for this tonight's session as well. The question from Brian, who's gone straight in for many questions. Brian, yes, Brian, straight in there. Brian's asked a question. DVT, so direct vendor marketing. How do you do it professionally if buying in your own initially? What's your thought about direct marketing?
Okay, so it doesn't really matter whether you're buying in your own name or whether you've got a company. I think it's all about, do you know what you're doing, and can you get that across in a letter? You know, we're all happy to share examples, I'm sure, But you've got to build trust with the person that you don't know that you're marketing to. So you've got to be able to stand out from the crowd. You've got to show that you're interested in helping them, because there's lots of benefits to somebody if they buy direct and don't go through an agent. So what I always say to people is put yourself in the shoes of that person and say, well, why would they come to you? What is it you're going to explain? And I've seen some awful letters. I get them all the time. I've seen some terrible ones. And I've seen some brilliant ones where it's much more, they've done a bit of research already. They know that I don't own just one on that road, I own two. And I go, oh, good for you, you know, and I might just pick the phone up and say hello. But so yeah, come back to me, email me. I'm happy to share some examples. But don't think that you have to have a limited company to do it. You just need to have knowledge. And knowledge is really important in this game. You know, there's so many amateurs out there, and you can see them a mile away. So don't be an amateur, you know, be a professional and use the experts that you've got here.
And to close off, I'll let you do the closing part. But just to get my pennies worth in, the next session, which I've just posted into the chat box for everyone, is going to be Monday, the 3rd of May at 7 p.m. So I'll say good night and then hand over to Bronwen for closing comments.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Simon. And as ever, the time has flown by, but wow, what a lot of questions, what a lot of great questions. And Brian, you've won the Easter Bunny for the most questions asked in one session. But wasn't that excellent? Do you like my pun there? Easter pun. I saved that one up for you. It was excellent, excellent event. We all had a lot of fun, and I know that you've all gained a lot of information. But as ever, if you want more information, email me. I can put you in touch with anyone here. I've also got a lot of material online and webinars and videos, pretty much with everybody in this group. So if you want some free information, come and find that from me. And my final Easter present to everybody is I've got 3 books I'm giving away for free, 3. So if anyone would like a copy of my book, I'd like you to email me and explain why you think my book, Building Your Dream Life, will help you build yours. So I look forward to your responses, and 3 of you will get a copy of my book in the post. So look forward to seeing those, especially from Brian. Okay.
Good night, everyone.
Cheers.